it is possible for a hobbyist who has had a decent camera, they've played with it, maybe they've lost interest, and now their kids are beginning to play some baseball or softball or volleyball or whatever it is, and they're wondering, can I live stream with what I've got? Your viewing habits tell me that you like comparison videos. What a coincidence. I like doing comparison videos. It gives me a chance to geek out over new equipment. Now let's go ahead and put the disclosure here. Me geeking out and me knowing everything about the equipment that I'm testing are two very different things. As a matter of fact, the two cameras that I'll be testing today are both in as much automatic mode, factory default, dummy mode might be the name that I need to use there, because I need to keep things in dummy mode if I'm going to be using them. Both of them are in as much automatic settings as I can possibly put them in. We're going to take and compare the Panasonic G9 with my very favorite Mevo Core. And we're going to use the exact same lens on both of them. Now, when we do this, we're looking to see if we can take a mirrorless camera and bring it into our mobile live stream. That's the ultimate goal for me. I want to know if this kind of equipment, something that I might buy for photography, for video, for shooting a little bit of nature or wedding or whatever, and be able to take that device and build a live stream setup around it. Now, battery life tells me no. I'm going to have to supplement battery life. Its ability to put it into software easily also tells me no on the mobile live streaming front. I don't want to have to lug around a computer in order to bring this into a mobile live stream. But there are a couple of ways, a couple of pretty easy ways to get around both of those things. For example, if I've got HDMI out on that mirrorless camera, I can run it through Zowitech's NDI converter. HDMI to NDI converter, and all of a sudden I have on my network, even my mobile network, a device that I can pick up with anything else through NDI. I also can take and supplement the battery with an AC converted battery or a power bank, depending on how the camera will charge and what its voltage requirements are. So with just a little bit of extra expense, I might be able to take that device that I already have in my bag and use it to get a decent shot for a mobile live stream. So let's compare the decent shot we're talking about with this GH9. And some folks may wonder, Jason, why did you choose a 5-6-year-old camera? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you why I chose it. It's because it's the same price point as the Mevo Core. Even all these years later, the technology in the G9 was so good that it actually outpaces the Core in some technical specifications. So let's look at a few of those, or consider a few of those. So we're talking about a 4K sensor on both of these cameras, and we're talking about a micro 4/3 lens on both of them. As a matter of fact, one of the main reasons I chose this camera is because I can use the exact same lens that I'm using, set of lenses that I'm using on my Mevo Cores. And so my Olympus 1442 lens that I use for kind of everyday everything, it's a great behind the plate view for me at my high school baseball field because of the deep backstop. It's great for in my studio. It's great for in my church. I also have the 45-175 lens that I can put on both of these sometime when it's not raining and get you a shot from outside. But for the comparison today, we're running the exact same lens on both of these cameras, and we're running 4K into my YOLOBOX Ultra. Now, there's a couple of things that are different about these two. We're talking about a 20 megapixel sensor on the LUMIX, on the Panasonic G9, but we're talking about an 8 megapixel sensor on the Core. We're talking about the ability to do 4K 30 or 4K 60 out of the G9, and we are limited to 4K 30 in the Mevo Core at this point. That's a software kind of issue, a firmware kind of issue. They may actually give us 4K 60 at some point. I haven't heard them talk about that yet, but I know it's within the realm of possibility. We'll just say it that way. And when we start talking about the megabits per second in how much quality is packed into whatever image we're shooting with each of these cameras, That G9 is going to give us 4K 30 at 100 megabits per second, whereas the Core is giving us 4K 30 at 40 megabits per second. And just so you know, for this test, I'm running both of these from their HDMI ports into the YOLOBOX Ultra, and I am recording this in 4K, 30 frames a second, at 100 megabits per second, so that you get to see the full capability of the G9 compared to the full capability of the Core, because it's not going to hurt anything to let it have some overhead as that HDMI cable sends it over into the YOLOBOX Ultra. And so some of the things that I'm seeing as we look at these images, as I have previewed these images, setting these two cameras up, I did my best to leave everything alone and keep everything just like it came. As much auto white balance, auto exposure, all those things, leaving them alone because I don't have a great eye to try to pick them out anyway. So let the software, let the processor in each of these cameras handle what it knows how to handle. It knows more about it than I do, so that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that I see is that the sensor in the G9 is going to give me a little bit warmer picture, and the sensor in the Core is going to give me a little bit cooler picture. That's personal preference. Tom Buck is one of those guys that likes a little bit cooler picture in his cameras, and so when you see his videos, you're going to see a less of a warm glow and more of a cool picture. It's the yellows or the blues, I guess, but that's probably way oversimplifying things. And so to match these two cameras, what I did was go into the presets in the Core and choose one of my presets that looked the most like what I had out of the box in the G9, which was that warm picture. And the preset that I settled on for the Mevo Core was Stage. Not one that I've ever used before on any setting. It's never given me the picture that I was looking for. But I am really liking this cinematic look that I'm getting with a little bit of natural light to my left, a little bit of artificial light to my right, and it's giving me a nice comparison shot between the G9 and the Mevo Core. So we started the video today with the G9, and you can see the warmth in my skin tones, you can see the warmth on the wall, and when I switched over to the Mevo Core, you may have noticed it is a little bit cooler of a shot. Now, those are probably more realistic skin tones for me and not quite so flattering as these are on the G9. But just to show you a little bit of difference between the two shots, I've tried to put them both at 20 millimeters on the zoom. Both the apertures are at 4.2 or 4.3. I think I was able to hit one on one and one on the other. I don't see any difference there. Our focus is on autofocus for both of them. And so we're really just getting the basics of what each of these is going to give us in this shot. Now, I did run both of these cameras outdoors a couple of days ago. My wife was shooting some video for her chicken channel, and we had a really good sunny day with some shade. She was standing in the shade. The coop behind her was in the sun. Some of the chickens were in the sun. And what you're going to notice here is, I have circled this on the screen, is that the G9 is actually going to blow out these chickens in the sun, whereas the Core doesn't blow them out quite as badly. Today, when I set the cameras back up, I went ahead and switched the lenses. Now, they are the exact same lens. They're both that Olympus 1442. They're both that micro four thirds that works with both of these cameras. But just to see if there was any kind of difference, I switched the lenses out. And I don't see any difference in the two. As a matter of fact, I started my testing with them on the other camera from what they are now. I switched them in my testing to what we went ahead and went with for the video, and I didn't see any difference whatsoever. And so it wasn't so much the lens that was giving us an issue with blowing out some of the colors in that. It was, in fact, the auto exposure or auto. Yeah, I guess it would be auto exposure there, or ISO. I'm not sure which one it would be, but whatever setting it was allowed some of that. It didn't handle the shade and the sun behind it quite as well as it could have. She was also wearing a black shirt, so it was dealing with a lot of depth of color. I do not have HDR turned on either of these cameras. So I don't have a high dynamic range. It's not my favorite to shoot with. but just how the sensor is going to handle those two scenarios, light and shade, and then this with quite a bit of artificial light, in addition to the rainy day window here that I have to my left. And so to see what kind of comparison we have, and then be able to decide, can I use this as my best shot for my live streaming setup, for my mobile live streaming setup? The best case scenario for bringing a G9 or some other mirrorless camera into your live stream setup is if you're using a streaming box. And I don't mean your football box. I mean if you're using something like a YOLOBOX Pro, YOLOBOX Ultra, Magewell Director Mini, one of those devices that is doing the streaming and encoding for you, and all you're doing is feeding it a signal from a camera. If you're doing that, then you don't have to worry about getting this on your network for NDI. You don't have to worry about trying to lug a computer out to your mobile live stream and connect it. That way, you can actually set this up and run it through your streaming box, your YOLOBOX Ultra, or whichever device it is. And you can have the best possible shot, depending on what lens you pair with your camera, and depending on what camera that you started with. So, in my opinion, it is possible for a hobbyist who has had a decent camera, they've played with it, maybe they've lost interest, and now their kids are beginning to play some baseball or softball or volleyball or whatever it is, and they're wondering, can I live stream with what I've got? Well, yeah, with just one additional piece of equipment, you can absolutely live stream with that camera, and it can be a really good live stream. Now, most folks, once they get the bug, they want to add a couple of secondary shots, and so you're going to need to make sure those cameras work as well. But the comparison video between the G9 and the Mevo Core shows me I've got two really good cameras pointed at me right now. And if I already own one of those, I can greatly reduce the amount of investment I have to make in order to get a really quality mobile live stream. Now, so you can have a good idea of what these two look like next to each other, I want to go ahead and set up a couple of inputs that are side by side. Now, that's pretty close to full screen. I see that I left some of my settings on that G9. I apologize for that. It's not a completely clean picture. But side by side here, you can see the difference in the warmth of the two pictures. And maybe after YouTube does all of its compression, when I've loaded this up, you can actually see a quality difference as well. I don't know that it's going to be very different between the two. But between the two cameras once it gets to YouTube because of all the things that happen. Then I also have one that is a little bit zoomed in so that you can just get me in the picture, so you can recognize the shirt color, the brightness, the skin tones, the quality, maybe even the sharpness. Let me double check and make sure I am actually in focus on this one, because I have been in and out of this spot several times since I set that Mevo Core up. So we're going to let that refocus on me. All right, so refocus. Now you can see the difference between the two in this close-up. I don't know how the YOLOBOX Ultra handles this particular preset, whether it's cropped or not, or whether that's just pulled full size from the image itself. But I can tell you that this one is about as close to what we can have of a comparison between the two as we can get. When this video was made, I was seeing the Panasonic G9 as the exact same price as the Mevo Core on Amazon. But I also found that there are many listings on Amazon for a less than new G9 for quite a discount. Some sold by Amazon themselves, some sold by other resellers, but it was low enough that you could actually add a lens back in and still come in at the same price as what just the core body without a lens is going to cost you. If you're not afraid of buying secondhand, then that might be an option for you. Keep in mind, you're going to have something else to go with it to either get it on your network through NDI, like that NDI converter we talked about, or you're going to have to run it through a streaming box, an encoder, in order to get it into a live stream, whereas the Mevo Core is not going to make you do that. It's a camera, streamer, encoder, all in one. But just so you have all the information, I want to make sure I talked about price as well.